I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're discussing an important book. It's called Civic Intelligence, Empowering America's Youth. It's written by a terrific author. His name is Dr. John Minkler. It is a transformative guide to revamping civic education. This book addresses the urgent need to teach democratic principles, civic values, and systems thinking in K through 12 schools to strengthen American democracy. With over 50 years of experience, the doctor offers a powerful roadmap for empowering the next generation to engage in community problem solving and foster lasting change. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Bookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
You're welcome.
Civics, it used to be taught in every school. It was just part of the curriculum. Now
Right.
it's largely absent. Why is that, and why is it needed back in the curriculum and back on the minds of young people?
Well, I think in the 80s, when there was a space race and the Cold War, we realized we have to our country has to increase its ability for defense, especially, and science and technology. So that became the priority in education, and that began a slow decline in civic education, and as well as vocational education and the arts. And then in 2000, we had No Child Left Behind as a policy for education, and it's still the predominant policy, where the idea is if we can just get kids reading and writing and high scores on those standardized tests, they'll do well being citizens, getting jobs, and it turns out that's not the case. So we now have a generation that really doesn't know how the government works. They know a little bit about their freedoms, but they don't know about their responsibilities and how to participate.
With rights come with responsibility come rights, and Constitution, understanding the government, the branches of government, all of that I think is largely neglected nowadays. When you talk about civics, talk about what subject matter would be included under this umbrella.
So civics is a number of things. I always start with civic values and the ideals that our nation was founded on. To me, that's the cornerstone. If you don't understand that, uh, you're lost as far as being a responsible citizen. So one of the things we emphasize in our Civic Education Center is the importance of students understanding American ideals and civic values. But then we teach students how to identify the issues that they're concerned about, how to choose an issue and do research on that issue, find community partners who can help them understand it and learn about what's already being done. And then those students identify a project they can do, a service project they can do to help solve a problem. And then they actually engage in solving that problem and do a service project. Then they reflect on it afterwards. So that's sort of the key element of our new method of civic education, on top of knowing how the government works, the branches, how a bill becomes a law, and knowing the civic values. Students need to understand the process of participating in solving real problems in their community.
Tell us a little bit about this Civics Education Center that you talked about. Where is it located, and your work with the group?
We're located in Fresno, California. We contract with local school districts and train teachers and students how to do the civic education process that I just described. And we're starting to have contracts with other agencies around the state and around the nation. So our method of empowering students by inviting them to identify real problems and then work together to help solve those problems, that methodology is growing beyond Fresno County. We've had over 3,000 students in Fresno County participate in this, and the results have been really positive.
That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about your book. Who's it for? Is it for educators? Is it for parents? Is it for both? And what you hope they take away from it.
So the book is for educators, uh, primarily, also community people who are really concerned about our education system and what could be done to change it, to make it more relevant to the needs of today. Um, we emphasize that students need to, when they're doing research on an issue, they need to find community partners to work with, including community-based organizations, service clubs, government agencies, and universities, and so forth, and parents. So those people will also, I think, benefit from learning about this new approach to civic education, but it's primarily for teachers and administrators.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting that some of the most important courses in a child's life have been neglected over the years. I think we started the conversation with that vocational education is ignored, but there are great high-paying jobs in the trades and they're ignored. Civics should be taught to every student because they need to know how this country runs and what its founding was all about. And it seems like you're doing a great service there. Tell us a little bit about your background. You've been an educator your whole life, I presume?
I I got my teaching credential in 1971.
Mhm.
And I was told when I was a new teacher then in California that there were three goals of public education. One is academic achievement, one is preparing students for work, and the third is preparing students to be active, responsible citizens. And so that's what I chose to focus on in my 50-year career in education. Unfortunately, that, as we've said, has diminished in importance in the schools.
Yeah. As are real skills needed to find jobs in many cases as well. That seems to be ignored as well for more of the theoretical approach that can be, tough to employ people who are of theory only. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What's
Could
your
I give,
vision? Go ahead.
could
I'm
I
sorry.
give an example of one of the student projects?
Sure.
Um, Part of the instruction about civic values is we talk about the fact that the Pledge of Allegiance actually means something.
Mhm.
The students say it all the time, but they don't really think about the words and what it means, that they're actually agreeing to the social contract of the United States and all that represents. And when I was teaching this to a group of ninth grade students, a group of girls were furious when they found out that they said, "Do you mean we've been told we have to say this and nobody ever told us that it meant something?" And I said, "Well, that may be the case." So their project, they always have to come up with a service project. Their project was to uh, write a coloring book for third graders that explained all the phrases in the Pledge of Allegiance and explained that it really means something when you say the pledge. And then they found out there were 300 third graders in the feeder schools to this Yosemite High School. And they went out and made a presentation to a Rotary Club. And the Rotary Club immediately wrote a check to pay for the 300 coloring books that they distributed to the principals of those elementary schools. So that's an example
Mhm.
of teaching civic values and inviting students to come up with a service project where they can help solve a problem that they've identified.
That sounds like a great project, and very, very worthy of their time and informative as well. How do you envision schools transforming to meet the needs of civic education today?
Well, I've also taught at the university level teacher education, especially in social studies. And unfortunately, very few teacher education programs include what was called, for many years, it was called service learning. Now it's called civic engagement. It's basically the same approach, but we're not teaching teachers how to do it. So we're trying, we're going back to some of those university teacher ed programs, but right now we have to train teachers who are already in the classroom, already working, and we provide workshops and institutes, and we go out and actually guide teachers individually, one-on-one, to learn this process. It's not that complicated, but it does have, there are some practices, best practices that are important to learn if you're going to send kids into the community. There are also administrators that are nervous about that, rightfully so, but it's really important that they get on board for the fact that if we're going to prepare this generation for the challenges they're facing, we've got to give them guided practice in civic responsibility.
Without a doubt. What's the name of your organization and how can people find out more?
The Civic Education Center, it's civicedcenter.org.
Civicencenter.org. And that's where people can find out more. Before we leave you today, let me ask you, what practical steps do you feel educators can take to incorporate civic intelligence into their curriculum?
Good question.
It's a big question, I know,
Yeah,
but buy the book, of course, and get in
yeah,
touch with you at the Center
sure.
for Civics Education. But if you give us a little outline of what you think educators should do to incorporate it into their curriculum.
Well, number one, I think it's essential that we teach the civic values and ideals of our founders. One of the things I emphasize is one of the primary documents that we rarely talk about is the Great Seal of the United States
Hmm.
on the dollar bill. And that was the vision that the founders had for this new nation that they were creating. And it includes our national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many into one. Uh, those are the kinds of things that I think are essential for teachers to be sharing with students. And then to invite students to identify the issues that they are concerned about. They're very rarely asked that question. I work with high school students mostly, and when we ask high school students, what are you concerned about? What issues would you like to help solve? They are deer in the headlights. Nobody's asked them before. They haven't thought about it. So it takes a while to guide them to understand we care about their ideas and their concerns. And eventually they open up and then they start getting excited about, well, we want to solve this problem and that problem. And then we guide them through a step-by-step process. We have a curriculum that guides teachers through the process of doing a civic engagement project.
Wonderful. I think it's great how you do engage students and you do enable them and empower them to come up with solutions and then actually put their thoughts and ideas into action. And I think they're learning great lessons, of course, by working with you and your group. The name of the book we're talking about today is Civic Intelligence, Empowering America's Youth. It is a transformative guide to revamping civic education. The book addresses the urgent need to teach democratic principles, civic values, and systems thinking in K to 12 schools to strengthen American democracy. It's a subject that has been overlooked for too long. It used to be part of every curriculum. Hopefully, the doctor's program will get picked up by more and more school districts. Dr. Minkler, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, sir. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.